I want to kind of get into some of the elements of the Deal Maker Bootcamp. The reason we did it is for several things that I want to talk about today. There's certain things we noticed successful new investors have done over and over again, and that's really what I want to talk about. And we bring a lot of those things together in the Deal Maker Bootcamp. And to help us with this, we have Drew Kniffin, the president of Nighthawk Equity. And not only is he here because he manages our 2,000 plus units, but he also was one of our early mentors and actually still to this day mentors other students. So he knows kind of what's working and what's not. And also he's going to be presenting the actual first deal simulation in Orlando as well. So I thought it may be really good for bringing Drew on. Drew, how's it going today?
Hey, Michael. Glad you're back on the show.
Yeah, so we're always trying to figure out what makes new investors successful and what accelerates their learning and their success. And clearly working with a mentor is one of those things. It's not the only thing that does that. One of the things that I found early on was simulating something. And I know I've heard Robert Kiyosaki talk about the cone of learning. It talks about after 2 weeks, what do we tend to remember, right? So for example, reading. So 10% of what we read 2 weeks ago we'll remember, right? The next one up is hearing words. When you hear something, that's why Audible is so important, or podcasts. Looking at pictures, visual is higher. 30% of what we see we retain after 14 days, and then it kind of goes up a little bit more, where like looking at an exhibit or watching a demonstration, right? It's 50% retention. And if you get more engaged, so you're giving a talk or you're participating in a discussion, 70% you retain. And as you go up in the cone of learning, the thing, of course, that has the highest retention is doing the real thing. Doing the real thing, and just under the highest in the number 2 position is simulating the real experience. So 90% we retain what we do in a simulation. This was what inspired the Deal Maker Bootcamp, because in there we basically simulate what it's like to do a first deal, all the way from finding it, role playing with a broker. What do you say? What scripts do you use? How do you then analyze the deal? How do you make the offer? How do you get it under contract? What are some negotiation? And we kind of throw some twists and turns at them. Same thing in due diligence. What is the process of due diligence? How do you not lose money during due diligence? What do you do in what sequence? How do you then, my goodness, raise us money, right? How do you deal with an SEC attorney? All those things that you deal with in a live deal, we will do in 2 days in sunny Orlando, January 27th to 29th. It's powerful. We've done it about 4 times before, and it is really impactful because it just makes you retain. It makes that thing so real. So Drew, I'm really excited that you're going to be presenting that case study.
Yeah, I'm excited to do it. I've been working on the sessions and the presentations the last couple of weeks. And as you said, just literally for me, going back and going through, how do I look at a property condition report? How do I look at an OM? How do I read through the BS that can exist within a rent roll or the financial statements? I actually saw some BS in the deal that we're going to be working on, right? And you have to know that. And then you have to unwind it, and you have to figure out what is the real NOI, what is real value. And so for me, going back to the building blocks of doing a deal, looking through this stuff, I'm simulating a real deal. And of course, this is a deal that, we've actually done. We've actually bought this property. And so we know, how it works and what doesn't work. And in simulation is fantastic. It really prepares you to do the real thing. I'm super excited about the event coming up soon, Michael.
There's other things that we teach, and you maybe even heard us on the podcast as well. There's other things that we basically simulate things. So here's some examples that come to mind. For example, we have this idea of a throwaway market. Okay, the idea of a throwaway market is that when you're just getting out and you're maybe not so confident about yourself, and you pick up the phone and you call a broker, right? And you say some dumb thing like, "Hey, I'm a new investor, and maybe you could send me some deals." And then what does the broker say? Sure.
Right. Or tell me your experience. Then you have very little experience and you don't know how to pivot, right?
Yeah.
So you look a little bit silly that first time, but that's okay. It's your throwaway market, right?
It's a throwaway market, right? So it's a way to practice, and you're especially practicing and simulating the real thing. And the same thing, another way to do it is just by visiting properties. So especially if your comfort zone ends at a quad, like that's the biggest thing you can think yourself doing. Well, maybe visit a 20 unit. And you get there and you're kind of like, biting your nails. Oh my God, look how big this thing is. And you tour it and, you spend a couple hours there, and all of a sudden you're like, that quad is small. I think I can probably do a 10 unit, So you're simulating an experience of doing a property tour.
Right. Or a similar scenario is, hey, you know that your home market, we like people to work in their home market if they can, because it's easy to do there. You're familiar with it. Your investors are probably familiar with it. But let's say your home market is too expensive, right? And you know the ideal market that you want to work on is a plane flight away. Well, then your throwaway market is your home market, because you can do site visits and visit deals to your blue in the face, right? Because it's easy. And then once you go and do your real site visit on that real deal where you have an LOI, you've gone through it a couple times. You have a couple at bats, so to speak, and that can make a huge difference in your confidence.
And that's exactly right. So I love the idea of throwaway market, like you said. And then the other thing where we simulate something is a sample deal package, and we talk about it in our book and talk about it on the podcast, right? Sample deal package is basically an investor package on a real deal with actual pictures in it and numbers. It's an investor package. The only thing is, well, you don't have it on a contract, so it's kind of a fake deal, but it's a real deal. But the point is, you use it as a conversation piece with the investors, and that opens up the conversation.
Right. And of course, we do this in our real life all the time, right? If you're in a play, you do a dress rehearsal before the curtains really open, right? And as mentors, sometimes I'll do role playing with the mentoring students, and we'll all pretend to be the broker and kind of the tough broker that doesn't want to give out the deal. And you'll see people sort of stumble through the first couple times, and then they sort of figure out, how do you respond to these questions? And so that's the kind of reps we want to give at the event in January is, how do you respond to these questions? How do you evaluate these deals so that you don't get frozen, so that you have the confidence to move forward? Because at the end of the day, I think confidence is one of the most difficult ingredients in the whole deal. You can do the analysis, you can find the deal, maybe you can find the investors, but can you find confidence in yourself to go under contract?
Well, confidence is everything because people react to you, and your confidence will lack their confidence, right? So if you don't have confidence, you'll get the questions from the broker about what your experience is, and then they'll probably ask you for proof of funds, which you don't have. Therefore, you just sound like a newbie. And the only reason you did that is because you didn't deliver the words you used with enough confidence. Same thing with investors. They'll ask, what your experience is, and that's what they do when you don't appear confident. Therefore, the only way you can get confidence is by building skill, right? And think of anything you've ever done in your life. Right, you're not going to be confident when you first start anything. I mean, just think of anything that you started. But when you get a little better, your confidence starts going higher. And so in this particular world, knowledge is key, but practice is even better. So once you learn something, especially, for example, like analyzing deals, you got to practice it. And so whatever you're doing, you got to practice analyzing deals, and we're going to do a lot about at the boot camp. But the point is, you want repetition, which is also why we're talking about the throwaway market, where you're talking to repeatedly to brokers, and it doesn't matter if you give a bad first impression. So in the beginning, when you're first starting out, it's all about practice, repetition, and it's not so important on the actual outcome of that activity.
Right. I'll throw in one more thing too, Michael. It's about networking and who you're around, right? So as you know, my old career, I had a Fortune 500, job in finance, and I basically left it all to go rent single family homes, and my family thought I was nuts, right? You sort of went off the deep end. And I love the phrase, you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time around, right? And so if all the people think you're crazy, you might start to think you're crazy. But if you're getting a chance to network with other people that are doing multifamily, that also believe that getting that first deal is getting your hand on the economic rung of financial freedom, right? And you meet those people and you spend time with them, and you know what they're up to, and you see them putting out LOIs, all of a sudden, hey, I'm not so crazy. I have a network of people who know this in their bones and believe this can work. And maybe I've been at, an event, and I've talked to people who actually quit W-2s through this stuff, and it becomes real. And so now you have the network, you have the confidence, you have those contacts to keep you in the game when you might otherwise peel out. The one thing I love about the boot camp so much is how intimate it is, right? We keep the group kind of small. You're sitting around, circular tables, you're working as a team, you're analyzing the spreadsheets together, you're making decisions together. We should or should not submit an LOI. We should counter. We should, make a second phone call, with insurance to figure out this issue. So it's very granular. It's very specific. It's very team oriented. And that kind of experience, as you said before, is really gives you so much confidence and isn't something you can find somewhere else. So I love that about this event.